I know. The credits are old. We've still got a picture of Alex Reid. I'm sorry, we will get there. But welcome to StonesCast special that's going to kick off the 2025-26 season. It's been a turbulent summer at the Vale and all around the National League. And that's really where our focus is going to be today, as I'm joined by Leo Werin.
Evening, Hillsy.
And by Tom Marshall.
Evening, guys. How are we?
We're all good. So tonight is, not just about Wealdstone. Tonight is about the National League. We're just over a week away from the big kickoff as 23 probably teams, certainly to start with. We'll battle it out over the next 9 months. And between the three of us, we've been badgering away, busying ourselves with trying to keep up with what's going on. And we're going to share our pearls of wisdom with you with the view that we're hopefully going to inform and enlighten and hopefully have some light-hearted banter as we go along the way. As always, a big thank you to our sponsors, Roll Beast. Been sponsoring us now since the back end of last year. Massive thanks to Rob and the guys. And as always, if you're looking for a good estate agent in the West London area, they're your men and ladies. So, where do we start? I mean, the view was maybe to go through in alphabetical order. I don't want us to cover too much because we've got the first kind of normal cast next week, which will be focused purely on Sam Cox and Wealdstone. So don't want to tread on too many toes for the guys there. One thing, guys, just as we maybe focus very briefly on last year, I personally felt coming out of that Halifax game and the conundrum and the saga of that season, I was so glad that it was the end of the season. I was done. How have you boys summered? Do you feel well rested and are you ready to go again?
I know from my point of view, I'm the same as you, mate. When that season ended, I was exhausted. It was very much a roller coaster ride towards the end of it. And as soon as that final whistle went in the Solihull Dagenham game, when the final whistle went in that game, it was like, right, time to put your feet up now. And it's been a nice break, but hopefully, obviously, just 2 weeks to go before the start of the season. I'm looking forward to it now. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I'm the same. It was very much that adrenaline high from the end of that game against Halifax. But then once the adrenaline brushed out and it very much came to normality, I was done. So it was just so nice to have a few weeks away, not have to think about Wealdstone because we knew we weren't going to be doing any player incomings until probably the end of June anyway. So we had a good 6 weeks to kind of cover our thoughts and see where we wanted to go. And obviously I'm now keen to get back on it. So roll on August the 9th.
Good stuff. We're recording this on the 31st of July. So we're just over a week away from the start of the season. And of course, everything that we share today, all the stats that we kind of bring out today will have no doubt changed by the time we probably even publish this, which should be out tomorrow. But even since I started, doing some research on the clubs, there's players that have come and gone and, it chops and changes all the time. One thing that does interest me, and I'll be asking you boys about managers as we go through this, like who you think your first manager that might face the chop is. But just very interestingly, as I look through all of the managers who are currently in the helm at these 23 National League teams, there's proper peak era Premier League players that fill a number of those. Tommy Widdrington, who else have we got?
Mark
Hughes, Kelvin Davis, Robbie Savage, Alan Armstrong. Simon Grayson, is he the last one? Matt Taylor, best we forget. Steve Morrison, I don't think really played in the Premiership much, but Neil Wardley, another one. So yeah. Anyways, without further ado, like I say, we're gonna step through each of the teams from A to Z. We will hopefully not spend too long, so that we're not here for hours and hours. But without further ado, let's start with Aldershot Town. Finished 16th last year, FA Trophy winners. Had an up and down season. I think, it was said they were sort of flying at one point, at a very slow start season, picked up again at the end. Boys, what are you expecting from Aldershot this year?
For me, it's a side that I think's got a lot of attacking options. So I think similar to what we used to say about Dean Brennan and Wealdstone when he first came in, the idea they'll score a whole bunch of goals, they'll concede a whole bunch of goals. I know a couple of Shots fans have said defensively there's maybe a lack of depth in terms of what they have at the moment. So Woodrington, he plays a fairly expansive style of football, doesn't he? Every time we come across him. So Yeah, I've got them doing a little bit better than they did last year. I think they'll just miss out on the playoffs, but they'll be around there for a fair bunch of the season.
Okay.
Yeah, I echo that, mate. Yeah, I think that attacking, score a lot with it. The last couple of seasons, they followed a similar sort of trend: score loads of goals, but leak a load of goals as well. And obviously, that trophy game for them at the back end of last season will be a huge boost for them going into this season. I think they've managed to sort of retain most of their sort of better players from last season. Obviously, Josh Barrett finished the season quite well for them.
Jack Barwin went to Chelmsford, didn't he? So that was their one big loss.
Yeah, they got a good goalkeeper. We obviously know Marcus Stewart. They got a good goalkeeper there as well. So we may come to it again later, but I've got them finishing sort of lower mid-table. But I think they'll follow a similar trend, score quite a few goals, but also leak a few as well.
It's probably worth introducing as part of this. I've been reaching out to various facets of our National League community, and thanks to all of our contributors. I will try and say thanks to all of you by name. So spoke to Rob Orrell from I think he's involved in Aldershot, and he kind of really said the same as what you guys have said in terms of they've got a young and perhaps inexperienced defence, but they kept hold of Josh Barrett. He signed a new contract, massive for them. They brought in Tristan Abrahams from Maidenhead and Kwame Thomas, who I think was maybe on loan there at the end of the season. Ryan Hill as well from Dagenham, tricky winger. He'll always cause a few problems. And the real intriguing signing that they've made, and this is a little bit of because I know it, they signed a guy called Matt Penny, who came through the ranks at Sheffield Wednesday, broke through to their first team. I believe he went on loan to St. Pauli in Germany, and he either played in or scored the winner in the St. Pauli-Hamburg derby.
Oh, wow.
His career has clearly gone in a different direction to that, but he finds himself at Aldershot now. I think he was at Altrincham for a bit last year, but very talented player on his day. Just in terms of as well, I've kind of done, Tom, what you've done. I've split each team into a section, and I had Aldershot kind of as they were last year. I'll put lower mid-table. So I think that was I've got the finish here.
I know defensively they obviously struggled last season, but they signed Luke Jenkins from Chelmsford.
Season before.
I was season 4. I was really impressed with him the season before, but he's been blighted with injury since he's been there. So it's, I don't know if he's back fit now, but if he comes back fit, it'll be like a new signing for them at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't think he'll certainly start the season. They have brought in Aaron Jones, an experienced player as well from Sutton. So I think we're all. I think you've maybe got them slightly higher than Tom and I, but sort of a mid-table.
Yeah. Although just on Aaron Jones, it was the other way around. He went from Aldershot to Sutton.
Sorry, you're quite right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move us on then. Alty. Finished 9th last year. Phil Parkinson is currently the longest serving National League manager. He was appointed in April 2017, so he's been there for quite some time, 7-8 years there now. I think just looking at kind of the ins and outs there, I think it's very obvious with Alty that they lost their firepower from last year. What's his name? Regan Linning has obviously up and gone to Carlisle. Massive loss for them. Alex Newby's gone to York City. And on their wing forward, Justin Amaluz has stepped up into the EFL with Grimsby. They have brought in some good players. From an attacking perspective, they brought in James Gale from Mansfield. I think he was on loan at Boston for a bit last year. And Jimmy Knowles, who also made his name at Boston. His EFL move hasn't really worked out. And a number of other players as well. Charlie Kirk, Billy Sass-Davis, Keaton Ward, Sam Reed. But as Altrincham, they were flying for a lot of the season and then really fell away in the second half. What are you expecting this year?
Yeah, I think they were their form kind of coincided with their keeper, Ethan Ross, getting injured at the back end of last season. I'm a big fan of Ethan Ross. I think he's one of the best keepers in the league. He's a big unit and he's a proper sort of National League keeper. But we always have sort of ding-dong battles with them, don't we? There's always either one goal in it with us two when we play them, or it's sort of a 4-2 or a 3-3. We always have great games against them. I probably see a bit like Aldershot, them having a similar season to last season, maybe not quite sort of breaking into the playoffs, but I think they'll be around the sort of 10th or 11th mark. Again, as you mentioned, Hillsy, a few of the signings they've brought in, you're never going to be able to replace like for like two players like Regan Linney and Alex Newby. They just had an unbelievable season last season, but I think they'll do okay this year.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the dark horse shouts is Ollie Cranshaw, who had been well as he'd had. I always really remember him doing really well at Stockport. Bit of a tricky winger, and then I think he broke his leg and he joined Oldham fairly early on. I think he got himself back in towards the back end of last year, but he could be a bit of an X factor for them going into this season. Billy Sass-Davis, really reliable centre back. As you mentioned, Charlie Kirk's a bit of a coup for them in terms of a signing. And Phil Parkinson, he always seems to get the best out of his players that he brings in. So I really like Oldham, and I've got them actually finishing 7th. So I've got them taking that last playoff spot.
Sneaking that playoff spot. Fair play. So a thanks to Erin Bow Carroll. She runs the Golf Road Goals Twitter feed. I believe she may have done some of the commentary from when we've been on, when we've watched on the National League stream. But she's kind of echoed a lot. Obviously lost a lot of their firepower. They've replaced it. Will continue to play attacking, possession-based football. I think I'd kind of agree with you guys. I think losing that firepower is massive. 2 top players. I've got them kind of mid-table. I think 9th last year. I've gone for 12th this year. Okay, our good friends who returned from the National League South, Boreham Wood. I think all of us were probably rooting for Maidstone in the playoff final because that would have probably made us the premier National League club, certainly in this area. And we've probably been fighting for the same sort of players. But boys, Boreham Wood back in the big time. What are we expecting from Luke Garrard and his troops?
Same as what we always get. A team that will waste time, be very efficient at what they do. Again, he's recruited well. Aaron Henry's come in, Jeff King's come in, Luke Norris has come in, who again could be a really, really good striker at this level. And again, they've got some really, really experienced players, haven't they? It might be a case of maybe they're a bit too old. Like Chris Bush is still there, Ashmore's still there, Liz Amby's still there. But they know the league, and for whatever reason they had that absolutely horrid season in there a couple of years ago. But they'll be fine. I've got them finishing 13th, slap bang mid-table.
There's a lot of familiar names in that squad, isn't there? Nathan Ashmore, Cameron Cox, Femi Ilisandi, Jeff King, Aaron Emery. List goes on. We've sort of been there, done it against all of these players before, haven't we? I can't really call Boreham Wood. They're big, ugly. Luke Garrard, I really rate him as a manager. It might not be the prettiest football, but that one season when they got relegated, it was a real sort of what appeared to be a one-off. They were sort of playoffs, just outside the playoffs, and all of a sudden they just had this season where everything seemed to go wrong. And fair play to him. He's managed to turn it around. Obviously, gone back there at the start of last season, having missed the first few games after leaving, but he's turned it around there. I've got them finishing 17th. I think they'll be sort of that sort of, they'll beat the teams. They'll pull off a few shot results against teams at the top end of the table. I think that sort of team that will bully teams into getting a few results that they probably shouldn't. So I think they'll be okay.
When I was writing this, because I started alphabetically, so I probably did them about a week ago initially. And I thought their squad looked quite thin. And I was like, where are the goals coming from? Nat Rush, Junior Dixon's an interesting signing. And Leo, you've alluded to, they brought in Luke Norris. And that's a brilliant signing. And I think he gives them a real focal point in attack. I'd have probably had them in the relegation zone had they not brought in Norris. And I still think their squad looks quite thin. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more through the door from Boreham Wood. Spoke to Boreham Wood fan Brett Lewis. Thank you for his inputs. He's a little bit more hopeful, should I say, than I am, expectant. And they're looking for a mid-table finish, looking to play an attacking style of play. But yeah, I got them. I still think they'll be involved at the wrong end of the table. I've got them 19th. One of the things I've always looked to assess with some of these teams as well, is with my position, is who has got the ability to make changes, bring players in. When we come to talk about Wealdstone, we know that we're very limited in that aspect, but we know Boreham Wood have got the ability to bring players in. So I might come back to bite me, and I could easily see them finishing mid-table. But based on what I see right now, I've got them down the bottom but staying up. One thing just to introduce as well, because one of you mentioned about their squad and the age of the squad. Now, what I'm about to show is probably already out of date, I'm going to pop it on screen. This is, as of probably yesterday or the day before, the average age, according to Transfer Market, which may not be 100% of each squad. Now, Wealdstone's highlighted in yellow because 26.1 is the average age of all of those squads. So Wealdstone are right in the middle. Interestingly, Sutton, and we'll maybe touch on this when we get to them, got a very young squad, but Boreham Wood there, 27.8, does highlight kind of the point you're making, Leo. I think it was you that said it. It's quite an ageing squad at Boreham Wood. Okay, so we'll move on and we'll go to probably one of the biggest success stories, especially from Christmas onwards of last year. The Pilgrims, Boston, who managed to stay up after an incredible second half to the season. Obviously beat us 2-0 and pretty much secured their safety. Was it Bank Holiday Monday, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things, obviously, is they've gone full-time. So they're a club that's gone into full-time football. They've lost some players. So as I just look through some of the players that have moved on, Brad Nicholson, Cameron Gregory, and goalie Cameron Green, probably three players that probably played 35, 40 games for them. And I think they're quite big losses. What's his name? Who's the big striker? Jacob Hazel. He's still there, but he's out for, I think, quite some time. But they have recruited quite well. Lennell John Lewis, the shop, has gone in, and that's almost a bit of a like-for-like replacement for Hazel. Greg Sloggett, who I think was on loan there. Jordan Cropper from Barnet, he a long throw. A couple of goalkeepers as well to replace Cameron Gregory. So, there's quite a big upheaval of players there. But, what do we expect? Do we think they're going to continue as they left off under Graham Coughlin?
Yeah, I was a bit torn on this one. I've actually got them finishing sort of 13th, 14th. I thought about, the prospect of them having a similar start to last season and being in the bottom four and, would they recover it? But I think just at the back end of last season, that must have given them such a lift. And if they can take that momentum into the early part of this season, Graham Coughlin's done an unbelievable job there. So he's, one of the best managers in the league. So, you'd think that they'd trust his recruitment. And as you say, some of the players they've brought in there, from what I've seen, they've got like a mix of proper National League experience and sort of some youngsters as well, and a couple of punts on a couple of leagues below. I think that's a good mix to have. So I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, fundamentally, they've kept their core. I know you said Hillsy, they've lost three kind of key players, but they've retained the bulk of the squad. And you say that form, that can't be coincidental. You might have an occasional flash where it just happens, but you don't have that consistent run of form for however many weeks they were, and then not be something that tracks into this season. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I've got them solidly mid-table. I've got them finishing 11th, and it'll be one of those things again where, because that was a horrid thing, wasn't it, last year? Just under Culverhouse, absolutely shocking starts, and that won't happen again. So they'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I've just glanced at my table. I've got them finishing 13th. And you mentioned there's a couple of players they sort of from different ends of the spectrum of the Football League. They brought in Ian Reiki, who I think briefly, I seem to remember Stuart Maynard saying once upon a time that we tried to sign him on loan. And he'd gone to, I think, Grimsby at the time. Yeah, that's right. He's a hugely talented player. I think he was at Tamworth for a bit last year. There's a real player in there. He could be good. And I think the lower league one is the striker Kieran Donnelly, who scored goals for fun at Hales Owen. He scored 60-odd goals in 2 years. It's a big step up. But, he could be a very interesting signing. So, yeah, I think under full-time, I expect them to progress again. I agree. I don't think they'll quite trouble the playoffs, but I think they'll have a solid season. And again, just a nod to the Up the Pilgrims podcast. I think we've kind of referenced really everything that you guys have said with what we've said there, but thank you very much for your inputs. Okay, let's move on to the winners of the National League North last year. Finally, Brackley Town made their way into the National League. We've obviously played them a couple of times. We've had some great days and some heartbreaking days against Brackley. You happy to see them in the National League, and what are you expecting from the Northampton boys?
Okay, so happy. I don't mind that was 7 years ago, that trophy defeat. There's still a couple of players in that side, aren't there? Still there. Shane Bird's still there. Gareth Dean's still there as well.
Yeah.
There's guys there. I say they've just been around forever. And you said up earlier, Hillsy. I mean, the experience they brought in. Michael Nottingham, he's been Football League only the last few years. Salford, Ryan Haynes, Cheltenham, really canny signing. And Gavin Cowan, he'll get them. He'll get them right. So I don't know. Obviously, can't say I know too much about them because I've not seen them play at all. But the fact that they were consistently in that playoff finals time after time after time, and this year they've finally been able to get over the hump. And I think they know that any experience they can get to help themselves out, that'll hold them in good stead. So I've got them finishing. I think I've been finishing 14th. Could be wrong. Yeah, 14th. There we are. They'll survive.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Gavin Cowan as a manager. I don't know what his background is, but from my sort of experience of Brackley and from what I understand, I've always kept an eye on their positions in the National League North and how they've been getting on in the playoffs. And they seem like a sort of side that don't let many in. They seem quite organised, quite compact, well drilled, and that should stand them in reasonable stead for the season going forward. Obviously, it is a big step up, National League North to the National League, and they've been threatening it for a while. So they're going to have a point to prove to say that we're here now, we want to stay here. I think they'll struggle. I've got them finishing just outside the bottom four. I've got them finishing 20th. But as you mentioned, Leo, players like Byrne and I remember Gareth Dean. He was an absolute rock at the back for them every time we played them. And I think he played 40 games for him last season. So I can't see him letting. I don't think they'll get pumped much, but they might find wins hard to come by at this level. So I've got them finishing 20th.
Yeah, I'm quite similar to you, Tom. I think I've got them in 19th. Big thank you to Will Grasshoff, who is head of commercial at Brackley. He gave us some really good insight, which was really valuable actually, because like you guys, I actually know very little about them other than they've retained the core of the team, a little bit like Tamworth actually, that have been there for a number of seasons and bags and bags of appearances and experience there. And Will kind of said, they've retained most of that squad. Defensively very strong. They don't expect, as I think you guys have said, they won't concede many. I imagine they'll be very hard to beat at home. And I think it might be a bit of a struggle for them, but I think they'll stay up. But it is interesting to note, as I just popped up there, the average age of the squads. Theirs is the highest at nearly 30. 29.4 is the average age of those players. So, yeah. Obviously, Leo, you referenced Michael Nottingham, really good signing coming in, bags of experience, but they're an ageing squad. Another player they brought in who's the wrong side of 30, but is a really intriguing signing is a guy called Jack Price, who I think had quite a good pedigree in coming through the UK system, but he's played a lot of football in the last few years in the States, playing in the Major League. Again, I think he's had some injury problems, but if they can get him fit, then it could be a very, very interesting signing. But yeah, intrigued to see Brackley. Okay, let's move on. The last of the bees, Braintree Town. Last season finished 17th. Flirted with relegation for a lot of the season, but pulled themselves away. I'm going to start with a bold statement. I think Braintree are doomed.
Same here.
Braintree are doomed. At the back end, their form dipped at the back end of last year, which coincided with the loss of Jermaine Francis. They've obviously lost Cairo Lisby as well. And they're two massive players for them. John McKinley, we know all about John McKinley, absolute unit, but he ain't getting any younger. And when you look at what they brought in so far, Lewis Walker from Woking and Freddie Hockey from Chelmsford, when I look at their squad and I've looked at their pre-season results and their team sheets, I think they've only got something like 12 confirmed players, and there's bags and bags of trialists. Now, very conscious of throwing stones at glass houses. We're very much in that boat, but I think Braintree are worse. Who knows? They could be about to sign 10 amazing players, and that might force me for a rethink. But what I see now, I think Braintree are going to really struggle this year.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. From what I've seen from their sort of pre-season results and their signings and incomings and outgoings, I only saw them play twice last season, but I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw. Obviously, I think they were the only team we actually did the double over last season, which tells you all you need to know. And they don't appear to have strengthened a huge amount since then. I've got them down finishing 21st, so sort of similar sort of end to the table as you. So unless they don't appear to be hugely backed financially as well, so I don't think they're particularly in the position to go and spend loads of money before the season starts. So a lot might depend on. And their loans last season worked really well. It's just whether they can repeat that, which obviously remains to be seen.
Yeah, so they got 2 guys in from Luton towards the back end of last year, Aidan Francis Clark and Jacob Pennington. Jacob Pennington, that's his name. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Hillsy. Obviously, haven't got any players, but that will probably be that may change in terms of trialists that come in over the next week or so. We said about Carlisle Lisby going to Peterborough, Jermaine Francis going to Hartlepool, but Louis Annesley, I really, really liked him when I saw him play Braintree last year, and of course he's gone to Dorking. So again, what your best centre back, or not even probably your best centre back's gone, and they've not replaced him either. And I think their issue was under Angela Harrop last year, they spunked a whole bunch of money, didn't they, in the summer on name signings, and it very quickly became apparent the money wasn't there to fund it, and they've kind of blown their lots, and they're a bit like us, trying to be somewhat sustainable this season. But yeah, with less players than we've got. And again, surprise. Steve Pitt, I'll give him his credit. He did a phenomenal job when he came in. But he's one of those, when you said about first managers to be sacked, I thought he won't be the first manager to be sacked, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's the first manager to walk.
Interesting. Okay. So have you got them down?
23rd, yeah.
Yeah, I've got them 23rd as well. I assume we're all of the opinion that Morecambe were just unfortunately
24th, yeah. 24th or not there.
Yeah, 23rd.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Making an assumption, but I think we're now going to go from one end of the table to the other as we introduce. Are they the biggest club to play in the National League since we've been in it?
No. Oh, since we've been in it? No, still no. No, I'd say not so bigger.
I would say not so bigger.
Yeah. Not so bad, more cup wins, been in the top flight longer.
Fair. Well, let's introduce them. Carlisle United. I've got a thing for Carlisle, and I think it's probably purely geographical, but the days of watching the Stones at Edgware and Northwood and, hearing some of the older boys talk about the heady, Gola League days, for me, there was something romantic about Carlisle. It was always the place I wanted to go and, dreamed about getting them in the FA Cup, let alone that one day we'd end up playing them in a league game. So I'm missing the home game annoyingly, but fingers crossed the away game in the depths of winter gets the go ahead. What do we think, boys? Are they on a one-way ticket straight back to the Football League? Is it as simple as that?
It never is. So many clubs, I don't know what it is. They seem to struggle to adapt. How many sides? Grimsby in the last 10 years, Cheltenham did it, and then I think Shrewsbury as well. But it's so rare that a side comes down. Bristol Rovers did it as well, didn't it? But it's so rare that a side comes down and then goes straight back up. I mean, you look at their squads, it is a joke. Regan Linney coming in, as you said, a guaranteed 5 out of this league. I mean, their strikers have still got on their books. There's like 3 or 4 that should be in the Football League minimum. But then we said something similar about Forest Green last year. They had a ridiculous strike power. It didn't quite work out. And Steve Cottrell, again, the manager that's experienced, and managed at this level, and Mark Hughes hasn't. And the weight of pressure, it will be fierce under them, and there will be an expectation from a lot of their supporters. I think some will be fairly pragmatic, but there will be some pressure to say, look, we should be absolutely smashing this league, going straight back up. I think they'll make the playoffs, but I don't think they'll win the league. So I think I've got them finishing 5th.
Yeah, I think it'll be the same old sort of story with big clubs that come down into this league. Whether it's complacency or what, we see it time and time again. Don't we? Big clubs come down, have this attitude or assumption that they're going to go straight back up, win the league. But as Leo said, it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. I don't know a huge amount about their squad. Obviously, they didn't have a good season last season, but just sort of looking into some of the players they brought in. Again, Regan Linney's obviously a great sign for them. He'll no doubt score goals this season, but I think they'll be there and thereabouts. I've got them 2nd, but I don't think they'll go up. I think it'll be another similar case of falling at the final hurdle for a team that's dropped back in. But again, like I said, I don't start a play. I'm not really sure what they're going to be like this year. I'm assuming there's been a fair bit of turnover from players that have gone out from last season. Obviously, Josh Grant's gone there as well. Whether he'll be a first name on the team sheet, who knows? But yeah, I think they'll be there and thereabouts then.
So just I was scouring around on Google for a sec there because Leo, you mentioned about how difficult it is for clubs to just come down and go straight back up. Carlisle actually did it on their only visit.
Oh, did they? There you go.
Premier back in I think 2004.
Well, any Carlisle fans that end up watching this, apologies. There's egg firmly on my face there.
They did, to be fair, go up via the playoffs. They didn't win it, but they went straight back up in their first season, and they've had one season in what was probably the Blue Square Premier back in 20 years ago. So big thank you to Dan, who's the chair of the CUFC Trust. He gave some really, really interesting insight for us, which was really useful. It's worth also recognising the sort of the yo-yo that Carlisle have been on, because they went up to League One at Wembley, playoff final, up to League One, and then double dip relegation, and now they find themselves in the National League. It's quite the journey. So he's just a quick, especially as we know so little about Oldham, but Dan said so 2 standout signings: Linney from Altrincham, and the return of Morgan Feeney, who I think was part of their promotion-winning squad to League One. So he's returned. They've lost a number of players. Who was the one? Kadeem Harris, I think, was one of their standouts in a obviously disappointing season last year. He's moved back to Salford. But, they've had quite a big turnover of players. Matthew Dennis, I think, had a good season. He's gone to Notts County. But they brought in, as we said, about Josh Grant, David Adjiboye from Peterborough. I think he's a big, powerful winger. I think he'll be very, very decent.
He will. Excellent.
Junior Oamba, and a big, strong centre-back, Beavis Mugabe, who's come in from, I think, Cyprus. And, of course, they've got Aaron Hayden, who we probably remember from Hemel days, but also, for those of us that watch the Wrexham documentary, a man who loves the goal, centre-back who loves the goal. So I think there's, bags and bags and bags of, quality in Carlisle's side. I think for me, the concern is it's just it's almost a change of culture for a side that's lost so many times over the last 2 years. I appreciate Mark Hughes turned it around a little bit. Obviously, couldn't keep them up last year. I think it's a big ask. I don't think there's any surprises if we say we expect they're going to have to go toe-to-toe with York, and we'll come to York later. So I think they may fall short, whether they go up through the playoffs and they end up doing a bit of a York last year. I can see them probably being clear of the rest and maybe failing in the playoffs. That's way off, but looking forward to the away day in Carlisle for sure. Okay, next up, Eastleigh. I'll start us off with Eastleigh because it's a club that, as I was looking through their signings, and Leo, I think we briefly spoke about this at St Albans on Saturday. I looked at their signings and who's gone out, and then who's come in, and I thought, you've made some really good signings. The likes of Josh Lundstrom from Oldham, I think Oldham, brilliant signing. Jordan Cousins coming in from Cambridge, and Aaron Pierre, centre back, bags of experience. Goalkeeper Nick Townsend, because Nick McDonald, what's his name? Aaron McDonald.
Joe McDonald.
He's gone up to League One with AFC Wimbledon. There's also the Maidstone pair. Aaron Blair scored lots of goals last year, and Temi Iwuka, who I think was a player that I think the Stones were maybe looking at last year. He was very highly regarded at Slough. He's had one season at Maidstone. I think he looks a really, really good centre-back. In the last couple of days, though, they have lost Tyree Shade, who is one of their standout players. He's gone up to Burton. So that's tempered my enthusiasm for them a little bit. But I've seen today they've already moved to make 2 more signings. Louis Holzman from Reading, who's got League One experience, and a youngster from Southampton who may be a replacement for Shade on that right-hand side. So 13th last year, I expect them to better that this year. Whether it's going to be enough to push the playoffs, don't know. But I certainly expect them to be on the front foot. What are you expecting, boys?
Yeah, I could never figure Eastleigh out. Every sort of season, they seem to be in that 10th, 9th sort of position. But every time we play them, they just look like just a standard. Like there's nothing special about them. I can't really figure out their style of play. They just seem quite nondescript whenever we play them. But you mentioned that they've brought in a handful of really good signings as well. But we sort of touched on, Kelvin Davis as manager. I always feel like if an Eastleigh manager has 6 or 7 bad results, they're always never far from a change. I just feel like he's, if they don't get off to a good start, he's the sort of person that could be on thin ice. But I've got them finishing 10th again, just the same as what they've done in the previous few seasons. That they've been a staple of the National League since we've been here, and I think they'll be the same next year.
Yeah, I've got them 9th, Leo.
I feel like Tom's been reading my notes because he's basically said word for word what I was going to say. Same. Like every summer, they always recruit one. I always think, Eastleigh or a dark horse. They'll be there or thereabouts, and they've obviously been in the playoffs a couple of times. But yeah, I don't make Kelvin Davis, so that's a massive flaw fundamentally. So I'm whilst I say we were talking on Saturday Hillsy, and we said would have brought in, if they kept Tyree Shades again, my enthusiasm would be significantly higher than what it is now. But like Tom said, we were talking about first manager to be sacked, and I did have Kelvin Davis down until the absolute last minute. I've changed it to somebody else. But I don't rate him as a manager. It might be short-term thinking because of that 3-3 game at the Vale and how we just completely capitulated with that side in the second half. But again, there's quality players there that you think should be doing better than what they've been performing. So I've got them finishing 12th.
So 9th, 10th, and 12th. I think we're all pretty much in alignment. Okay. Next up, I was tempted to put their kit up and bleed everyone's eyes. You boys start. Forest Green under Robbie Savage. I just need to go and top up my
This is so potentially Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, isn't it? I've got no idea how this is going to go. Either going to be the best thing since sliced bread, and somehow Robbie Savage is a genius manager that I never knew existed, or it's going to go completely, I won't say completely tits up, but there's going to be massive underachievement compared to the resources that Dale Vance has put into the side. Don't you think, Tom? I've got him finishing just outside the playoffs. I've got him finishing 8th. And he'll still keep his job only because he's on a 4-year contract.
Yeah, I've got them finishing 4th. The reasoning for that is just the financial firepower that they've got. I mean, even if Robbie Savage does get off to a stinking start and they're 13th after 10 games, again, I feel like Vince is the sort of bloke that will pull the trigger on him early, and they might go for someone a little bit more tried and tested. And if they do that, they will likely recover and end up in the playoffs anyway. So that's one side of the coin. But then Robbie Savage might be an absolute masterstroke and end up in the playoffs as well. And again, I look at some of the players they brought in and the teams they're coming from. There's a lot of experience there again. Again, I saw them twice live last season, and obviously saw them in the playoffs as well. I didn't see anything particularly special about them. Obviously, they finished where they did they fell off completely, didn't they? At the back end of the season, they were in that limbo period where they were behind the top 2 and way ahead of the rest. So the intensity dropped off a bit, but I think they'll be there and thereabouts again. I've got them finishing 4th.
Yeah, I've also got them finishing 4th. It's interesting you said about bringing in a tried and tested manager as Savage goes, but I mean, this is Dale Vince, the man that's brought in Duncan Ferguson, Troy Deeney, and didn't he put a woman in charge for a while as well?
In pre-season, I think. Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. So, I mean, Dale Vince, interesting character we know. One thing I will say about Forest Green, I was watching, looking at their pre-season with utter jealousy as they played 2 pre-season friendlies in what I assume is Germany, where they beat Armenia Dornbirn 4-2 and TSV Cotton 7-0. There was pictures of some of their fans out there with flags drinking German beer or Austrian beer or whatever it was, and I was like, Anyway, I don't know, Leo, I don't know if you mentioned it. Obviously, Cairo Mitchell is a pretty big signing for them.
It is true. Yeah, I didn't mention that. That's a good call.
Just to go along with Christian Doidge and Joe Quigley and Harry Cardwell, with the embarrassment of riches that they've got up front. They've lost Manio Sadevi, who I think was one of their better players. Ben Tozer's retired. The one player that really interests me, Robbie Savage has obviously brought 3 players from Macclesfield with him, which is Lauren Mendy, Trey Pemberton and Neil Kengney. So, I mean, who knows? They obviously romped the Northern Premier League. Big step up. The one that really interests me, though, for them is Yaya Bamba, who they signed from Eastbourne. He looks a real handful, very, very exciting, explosive player. Had a really good season with Eastbourne last year. I think he could be a young player, a star to emerge out of the National League this year. But yeah, I've got them finishing fourth. I don't think there's bags of experience. There's just something lacking about them as a squad.
I agree.
And with all that firepower, they didn't actually score many goals last year. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Savage does with them. They've clearly got the firepower, but who knows? Okay, next up, the Heed. Now we're good friends on this podcast with Mickey, our good friend Mickey from Gateshead. Had a good chat with him about what's been going on at Gateshead. I don't know how. Well, I need to be careful what I say, but I don't know how much people have really seen what went on there. Back in the last year, Victor Anachibi turns up with his coat, collar up, says he's going to buy the club, starts going in, undermining the manager, telling them to do this, that, and the other, falls through. Their season, obviously, they tanked from, possibly being title challengers, maybe sort of November time, to losing and failing to make the playoffs on the last day. So they finished 8th. They've lost a load of players. Regan Bootie's gone to Barrow, Aidan Rutledge, Greg Ollie, Ben Warman, Tim Akinola. They've lost Luke Hannon. They've lost a lot of players. And I had them struggling until last week. They brought in Dom Telford, Barrow, who was at Barnet for a bit last year, and Harry Chapman, who was also at Barnet.
Harry Chapman's a joke. That's a great signing for them.
Yeah, it is. I do still think they've lost a lot of good players. And I don't think they're one of the sides that are just going to go throwing money around. So for me, 8th last year, I've got them finishing lower than that this year. What do you boys think?
Yeah. Go on.
I was going to say it's the departures in the midfield. That's the key thing. Harry Chapman, very good signing, but you lose Regan Booty, you lose Greg Ollie, you lose Tim Akinola. That's a pretty formidable midfield three, and you lose them. That's going to take some replacing. They had quite a bit of depth, I thought, last year, Gateshead, and that was always something that allowed them to continue to be in and around the playoffs. And like I say, Anachibi, everything that went on with their directors, one who resigned, didn't he, in the summer. It was all going on behind the scenes, and they had that transfer ban, didn't they, until a few weeks ago as well. I'm not quite as pessimistic as Heed fans seem to be online, because there was a lot of doom and gloom, like, we're down, send us down, that's where we are. I think they'll survive, but being dragged down towards a relegation pack, so I've got them finishing 19th.
Yeah, I've got them 18th, so similar sort of views. A lot of Gateshead's success this season, I think, will depend on whether they can retain that brand of football. Obviously, the last few seasons they've had that reputation, and we've seen it. The last few times we played them, they've just completely destroyed us, especially at home. We played them at home, didn't we, around February, on a complete bog of a pitch. And we couldn't put two passes together, and they were just pinging it around us like nothing else. It was ridiculous. So if they can sort of maintain that brand of football under the new manager and the players that they brought in, there's always that thing with Gateshead, isn't it? Their catchment area is so large up there. They're one of the sort of premier teams in that region. They seem to pick up a lot of really good young players from the likes of Newcastle, Sunderland. But again, the big thing here, Hillsy, you touched on it, Luke Hannon, Greg Ollie, there's some huge players that they've lost there. I think they'll be all right, but I've got them finishing 18th.
Yeah, I've got them 14th. They've still got, like, their forward line, Dom Telford, Joe Van Malkel, Frank Noble. They've still got some quality there.
Jamie Malcolm, he scored against us, didn't he, a couple of times. He's still there.
Yeah. I think it will be a tough season for them. But I think they'll have enough, ultimately. I don't know whether I said as well. Obviously, Alan Armstrong has gone there and replaced Carl Magnay as manager. Okay. Next, our slightly less good friends after the shambles of the first away game of the season, Halifax Town, where we now go in December after our fixture with them has been reversed. So Adam Lakeland has replaced Chris Millington, who was there for a good few years. I always found it strange because Millington seemed to get a bit of a raw deal from their fans, despite he kept them, got them in the playoffs, finished 6th last year. They've lost Brian Galvin and Adam Senior have joined Brennan and his mob at Barnet. I think Brian Galvin scored in the cup this week, didn't he? So they've lost a few players, but they've brought in a few players. Notably, Adam Lakeland has brought in Josh Marmee, Dylan Crowe, and Cody Johnson from Kings Lynn. So he's brought a few players with him. I always find Halifax a little bit like Forest Green. I always find them there's nothing that really stands out about them, but they seem to, be solid and get results and ultimately finish higher up in the table than they finish lower. What are you expecting this year, boys?
Yeah, I similar to you, I kind of liken them to Eastleigh a little bit. They're just consistently doing the same every year. They've obviously got their style of football. Their home form is generally okay. That's obviously they've got troubles with their pitch, or had troubles with their pitch before the ongoing renovations that they're having. Again, they've Galvin and Senior, two of the sort of better players from last season. But you look at that list of players they've brought in. There's experience there. There's Sean Hobson from Oldham. He's got bags of experience at this level.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't know a huge amount about Adam Lakeland and what his brand of football is going to be. But similar to Eastleigh, really, I just see Halifax doing the same as they've done the last few seasons. So I've got them finishing 7th.
I'm always surprised. I'm like with you, Hillsy. I don't get why Millington got such a rough deal from their supporters, especially because it was always a case of any of their half-decent players went in the summer, and then having to go bit of scouting, bit of baby bargain basement shopping, finding guys that they would massively overachieve with relative to the resources that they have. And Adam Lakeland, from what I've heard through the grapevine, he's a bit more direct. So that's a bit ironic given the pitch renovations that are taking place. If it's going to be a bit more long ball, direct football. I just get the feeling it's a bit like the Stones staying up. It's just not sustainable. The idea of losing your better players time after time after time, and then eventually you're going to come across one summer where the players you bring in actually are nowhere near good enough for the aspirations of the supporters and of the football club. So I've got them dropping down quite a bit. I've got them finishing 16th. But again, this could be a bit of a wild take, and I'm sure one of those where Halifax fans come May next year will go, haha, you got that horribly wrong.
I've got them in 10th. I've got some input from Luke Walsh, who runs Luke Walsh's football podcast. I'm sure many of you boys will be familiar with him. He kind of said the same thing, losing, we didn't mention as well. What's his name? Jack Evans, who has moved on to Harrogate. So him and Senior, big bosses to the side. Sean Hobson, as I think Leo, you said, that's a great signing. I remember actually went old. Was it Tom? Sorry. I always feel a lot of players have gone to Oldham and it just hasn't worked. Obviously, Alex Reid to a certain degree. Oldham seems to be a bit of a graveyard for some players' careers. But Sean Hobson was so highly rated when he left Southend. And if they can get him back to the form that he had there, that's a brilliant signing. Luke is looking towards playoffs. He's hungry with a young squad, and they do have a young squad. David Carla, who they signed from Aveley, scored a lot of goals in the National League South. He'll be an interesting signing for them. Again, another one about stepping up. But just pausing on Halifax, and as we go through these teams, someone mentioned there about Halifax's home form. And here's another. Let's interrupt the flow of teams with some more stats. Now, what I'm going to show you here. Yeah, look at that. This is my attempt at showing home form dependency.
Oh, wow.
Or not. So this is looking at the last 3 seasons, and the colour coding there is sort of based on what league you're in. But effectively, it's showing you percentage of points that you got, your total points that you got from home games and then from away games. And then it's added together the difference. So, for example, if you look at the top Scunthorpe in their season 22-23, which is a National League season, I think the year they went down, they picked up nearly 71% of their points at home, which was then a 41% swing. So I basically added together those diffs together for the last 3 seasons. And in theory, the higher the diff, the more dependent you are on home form. And I think we can all see who comes in second there.
Yeah, ironic given what we were like in the south, but yeah.
Well, I won't be at the Meet the Manager next week, but I would say to Sam Cox, Sam, how are you going to improve our away form? Because at some point our home form is going to be
Win one game, and that will do it.
But you mentioned there about Halifax and their home form. Not quite true. They've actually picked up more points away from home in the last 2 seasons, but maybe that plays to actually the point you were making, which is their pitch ain't great.
Yeah, 2 years out of date. But...
yeah. But yeah, it's quite interesting there looking at some clubs and their dependence on their home form. Okay, back to the fun, and we move on to Hartlepool, now managed by Simon Grayson, who replaced Anthony Limbrick in the summer. He who replaced Lenny Lawrence, I think, shortly after we played them in January. So they've had a little bit of instability. Now, what are we expecting, Leo?
Well, this is going to be my hot take, Hillsy. I've actually got him finishing third. I really like what they've done this summer. I know defensively still some question marks, but a really solid midfield. Jermaine Francis, proper X factor on the wing. We know about Alex Reed, but Danny Johnson, a proper experienced striker alongside him, and we know Reed can't perform up top on his own. So having somebody alongside him, of that caliber. Simon Grayson, of course, he's the enigma in all of this because, again, very experienced manager. Everyone knows him from his time at Leeds. And I don't think, you might correct me if Hillsy, but I don't think he's ever managed in the National League before. So totally foreign to him. But I just get the feeling he'll get a tune out of the players. I know something will resonate, but I'm really high on Hartlepool. So, don't ask me why, but I've got them finishing third.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, mate. I mean, you look at the sort of players that have gone out, it's almost a complete overhaul of probably half the squad. And sometimes you see that as a bad thing, but I think Hartlepool were kind of at that point in this league where it's just gone stale. They weren't really going anywhere. They weren't really doing anything. So that whole idea of just completely ripping that squad out and almost starting again with the new managers is probably the best move they could have made. Obviously, you've touched on some of the signings that they've made there. Jermaine Francis, obviously Alex Reed. There's a few statement signings in there. They've got a sort of statement manager and a few statement signings in there. I think they'll have a really good season. I've got them finishing sixth, and I think they're a real dark horse for sort of going up through the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've got them finishing fifth. In my notes, I've kind of put big changes. Replace some old deadwood in their squad. Gary Medine, I know he's got a good goal against us, but him, Luke Waterfall. Obviously, losing Manny Desaroué he's one of the best strikers in that league. But of course, they've replaced him with Alex Reed and Danny Johnson, as you've alluded to. The other one that I think, Reece McNally, that they've got from Kidderminster. I know he's obviously sort of struggled when he was in the National League, but I think he's a big, strong, athletic defender. I think he's a very
Daly in the midfield they brought in the last week as well. So yeah, they're just building up. And I think the thing I always thought Raj Singh was just broke, cheap, but just turns out he's cheap. He's got the money and he's decided to put some money in towards the playing squad this summer. Yeah,
at the start of this pre-season, I thought they'd struggle, but looking at the signings they've made, I've completely changed my mind on them. So.
Yeah, and the other one I'll call out, who from his time at Gateshead, Adam Campbell on his day is one of the most outstanding players in that division. If Grayson can get him back playing fit, and I think he's had a good pre-season, he is an outstanding player. Adam Campbell.
They did lose
Crawley, didn't they?
Crawley came from. They did lose Anthony Mancini, didn't he? Who I know Paul's fans absolutely loved, but he's a bit like Campbell, just can't keep himself fit. So
exactly.
Yeah. We'll touch base on him when we get to Rochdale.
Yes. I think kind of very similar comments that I got from Isaac Rettelick, who's a Hartlepool fan. Thank you for your contribution, sir. Just glancing through, see if there's anything I've missed there. But yeah, I think Hartlepool are in for a good season. If Grayson can make it, get it to gel quickly, then yeah, I think they'll be playoff bound. Morecambe, obviously, I think we've said we'll grudgingly have to pass by. Wish them all the best. Gutted if we can't go up there, but I'm sure that's the least of their worries. And we jump a number of letters in the alphabet all the way to Rochdale, arguably with one of the biggest playoff bottles ever seen. Thrown away, was it 3-1 up with about 10 minutes to go against Southend? Simi, though, they've recruited very well. Just today, actually, part of my notes were that their goalkeeper situation needed to be resolved because they had one young goalkeeper. They've just brought in, literally in the last couple of hours, Tom Miles from Man United. But their list of signings, just looking through it, David Tutonda from Morecambe, solid, played 40-odd games in League Two last year. Manny Desirue, we know about. Joe Pritchard, quality player for Oldham. Mancini, we spoke about. Liam Humbles. Dan Moss from Woking, I think, is a quality signing. Real good.
From Maidenhead, he went there, didn't he?
That's it.
Yeah.
And Levi Manchi, who's on loan from Walsall. He was at Maidstone. I think Bromley as well.
Yeah.
So some real good players they brought in. Obviously, we've mentioned Cairo Mitchell has moved on to Forest Green. But yeah, I think Rochdale are in for a good season.
Yeah, I agree. I've got them sort of pretty much on par with Hartlepool, to be honest. I've got them finishing 5th. That you look at that, you read out those players that they've signed. That is a proper National League team as well, and they've retained like a decent core of the rest of the team as well. I really rate Ryan East in the middle of the park for them.
I know Leo's a big fan.
Yeah, and you've obviously got Alarakia, who's a live wire for them as well. I think that they'll have a strong season. I think I've got them finishing 5th.
For me, it's them and York in the title race. It's
them and York.
Them and York, okay. And I've actually got Rochdale pipping them to the title. I think they've recruited seriously that well. We'll go on to York, and of course their midfield Dave Porton is an absolute joke, and I get that. But yeah, Ryan East, Harvey Gilmore, Taryn, the front two of Devontae Bodney and Desiree. I mean, you're not going to find a better strike force than that in the league. York fans will say Ollie Pearson's, whoever plays alongside him, but then Amanchi is cover. Defensively solid. Sam Beckwith, I think, is the best left back in the league. They're just solid all rounds. And Jim McNulty's obviously he's very much possession based football. He might be the thing that where it all falls apart because I think he's very like Maynard. He's very stubborn. If things aren't going quite his way, that could be a problem. But in terms of what they brought in and the season there last year, I had them last year winning the playoffs, and they probably should have done if they'd not done that bottle job. But I've got them just pipping York to win the league.
So I'm just looking at the very detailed notes that were sent to me by Charlotte Cromartie, who is part of the Rochdale Her Game 2 group. And I'm just looking at what she said about trying to find it where for Jim McNulty, because I'm sure it was Rochdale. She mentioned about some of the coaching staff that's come in with him. And I'm struggling to find where it is now. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the other thing as well that really caused them problems last year was their pitch, which I think they've had a lot of work done to it, perhaps not to the extent that Halifax have, but they ended up playing so many bloody games of catch up at the end, and that kind of, I think, caught them out. And I think some of the stuff that Charlotte was alluding to, that some of the players, especially the likes of Harvey Gilmore and Ryan East, were running on empty going into the playoffs. So, here we go. So Phil Jim needs to bring other people. So he's brought in ex-players Jason Taylor and Matt Dunn, as well as Josh Lillis as goalkeeping coach. Jim's defender mentality came out a bit too often when they were winning games, and his substitutions late in the games cost us. Jason Taylor also excites me because we've been labelled too nice, and under Jim and Taylor was known for gritty defensive midfield attributes. So it seems off the pitch that Rochdale have also made some changes, and McNulty's got a little bit more structure and support around him. So I've got them finishing 3rd. Leo, I mean, you've sold it to me a little bit more there, and I can absolutely see them challenging right up there. We've beaten them twice at home. Who knows? We can hope. Okay, moving into the many S's we've got. How are we doing for time? We're going to be going out. That's not too bad. Scunny, promoted by the playoffs in the National League North last year under Andy Butler with his first season in charge. Fellas, I'm guessing, I think both of you are at Scunny away in that dreadful 4-1 game. I mean, I think that was as low as it got in terms of poor performances. What are you expecting from Scunny this year?
Yeah, I was at that Scunthorpe game for less than an hour. I was gone after about 58 minutes. But I mean, I expected them to be back straight away. It took them a little longer than they would have liked. I don't know a huge amount about them. Obviously, by far the biggest team in that National League North last season. I understand they got Cal Roberts in their squad, which is a ridiculous player for the National League North. Obviously, he did really well for Notts County in the National League, and then he went up to Scotland, I believe, for a little while before finding his way back down south of the border. But difficult one to call, Scunthorpe. I would imagine that they will be reasonably well drilled. I don't know. I'm looking through their squad. I can't say I know a huge amount about them. Obviously, they've lost their goalkeeper to Northampton. I think he was one of the best players in the National League North last season. I've got them finishing in the bottom half. I've got them finishing 16th. Don't know a huge amount about them, but I think, given the size of the club and the knowledge of the players that they do have, I think they'll be okay.
Controversial again, Hillsy. Shall I go for it?
Go on then.
Okay, I've got to go straight back down. I've got to go straight back down. I've got Andy Butler being the first manager sacked as well. I think Ross Fitzsimmons, Tom, spot on. Losing that is a big, big blow for them. And they've not, as far as I know, they've not recruited somebody else in at the moment to replace him. And of course, a goalkeeper, you could argue after a striker is probably the next most important position that you need to bring in. A lot of names in the side. We said about Cal Roberts, Will Evans, I think, still there. They did lose Maximum Carrigan, I think was the other centre back. He's gone to Hartlepool. But they're a club, before I gather, that don't see a lot of names, but don't really have any money because they've got quite a few debts to pay off. So I just get the feeling, maybe not so much depth, and it maybe set about expectation. Scunthorpe fans will be thinking, well, we should be more than safe. We're a massive club in the National League. We'll be fine. But again, if it's a poor start, Butler potentially gets the sack, and it all snowballs. That's the reason I've got them finishing 21st. But again, that could be horribly, horribly wrong come the end of April.
So, Leo, I tend to agree with you. I've got them finishing 20th, so just staying up. They've recruited okay in terms of the goalkeeping situation. So, with Fitzsimmons going, they've got Mason Campbell, who I think from some of the insight that I got from Barra at the Iron Hour podcast. Thank you for your insight. I think Fitzsimmons going has kind of given a nod to Mason Campbell. They brought in Taylor. I think it's Taylor. No, sorry, Watson. Rory Watson from York, who was York's number 3 last year. But I think his insight was the goalkeeper in the situation is likely to be the weak part of their side. For my notes, I put a good impression that they'll be limited, big, strong, good at set pieces. But I think they'll probably be hard to beat, but limited. And as you said, I'm not sure there's a huge amount they can bring in. Yes, Cal Roberts will win a few games by himself. And little sneak peek, he's in my National League 11. And when you look at their strikers, Mark Beck, Danny Whitehall, big, strong, but I could say limited players. I'm in that boat. I think Scunthorpe will find it tough. They might just have enough. They'll be resolute enough to, nick a few wins. But I definitely think they'll be down there. Okay. Next. Some smirks. We all take joy in watching Matt Taylor struggle and then hugged and sung his name when him and Manny Duku somehow kept us up in the last game. Solihull's an interesting one, and I'm going to go hot take. I think they'll have a good season because I think they've recruited quite well. I also, and I think I'm saying this with the benefit of hindsight and some of the insight shared by our former players, current players, on their views of Matt Taylor, I think he will get it right at Solihull. If he doesn't get off to a good start, he could easily be the first one gone. But when I look at the players they brought in, they brought in a goalkeeper from Ireland, very experienced in the Irish Premier League out there. Tyler French from Sutton, Ben Wortham from Gateshead's a really good signing. Dan Craney, if you haven't seen his volley against Derby last night, Oh my word! Go and see
He's
that
wasted
goal.
it though. Why is he doing that in a friendly and not in the league? Like,
I mean, he's got what 19 for Tamworth.
Yeah, he scored
You
it.
know,
Yeah,
take the guy in
yeah.
form. Brad Nicholson, Cameron Green, two solid players in from Boston. Callum McFarlane's gone there. So Oscar Rutherford. I think they've got real good players. And then I look at who's gone out. Obviously, Jack Stevens is a big loss. For the rest of it, I think they've recruited really well, and I expect them to go well. What else did I put in my notes? The thing as well, with them, they're generally quite, they've got a bit about them, and I think in the last couple of years they've cut their cloth a little bit, knowing that they won't make the playoffs, so they might have a little bit of a war chest there. So I've got them finishing 7th and nicking the final playoff spot.
That is bold. I'm not as optimistic as you, Hillsy, but you've sold it well. I'll give you that. The recruitment, can't knock it. And being able to significantly damage a rival of yours in Tamworth by taking their main striker, of course, that's a fantastic bit of business for them as well. I'm just curious because Jerry Gill's now gone to Dagenham, and I'm not sure who they brought in as an assistant to support Matt Taylor. But when he was there with whoever he had previously, obviously it didn't work. And as you say, players love him, and that's been clearly not brought to fruition, but it's been clearly evidenced and demonstrated by current and ex-players at Wealdstone. I'm not sure what it is because the style of football's fine. He's very articulate. He's eloquent when he comes across. It's just clearly not been able to translate it to the players on the football pitch. So I think they'll be fine, but I've got them finishing 15th because I just don't. Apart from Craney, I'm also then struggling to see a bit of where the firepower is going to come from. And then again, as well, I'm just not sold on Matt Taylor.
Yeah, it's a tough one, Solihull. I'm the opposite. I like Matt Taylor. I think he was dealt a tough hand both at Wealdstone and at Solihull last year. I think both stints that he had, he was absolutely riddled with injuries. I don't think he barely once last season was he able to play an 11 that he wanted to play, and he's kind of had some time to. And they did pick up a little bit at the back end of last season as they started to get players back. I know there was talk about Jerry Gill being a factor of that, but it did also coincide with a few of their players coming back from injury. Good recruitment, as mentioned, but I think a lot is going to depend on whether they start well. If they get off to a poor start, I think they're going to have a poor season. But if they get off to a good start, I think they'll have a good season. I think if these players can stay injury free, I think Matt Taylor will eventually find his feet. But I've literally gone straight down the middle of these with Solihull. I've got them finishing 12th. So.
Fair. And thank you to Michael Mulren, also known as SMFC Stato. He sent us some really good insight just looking at some of the players that they've kept. I think we've alluded to the loss of Joe Newton, but also Jack Stevens to Oldham, big loss for them. He's delighted to see the new goalkeeper come in. I think his view is that Solihull have a really good starting 11, but maybe a little bit of a lack if they pick up a few injuries or suspensions. And his big expectation or hope for the season is that and this is a brilliant stat, they've reached the first round proper of the FA Cup for the last 9 years. But they've not yet got to the third round. So that's his hope for the season. Fair play. Okay. Now we move on to last year's beaten playoff finalists, Southend. Tom, start us off. Where do you think the Essex boys are going to go this year?
I really like Southend. I think they've got a really good squad there. Obviously, we played them at the back end of last season. I was seriously impressed with how they looked. I watched all their playoff games as well. They looked resilient, hard to beat. Obviously, they were dead and buried against Rochdale, weren't they? And they came back from nowhere. Ben Goodliff is a huge signing for them. Back in a lot, he scored against us. I think he scored in the playoffs as well. A goal scoring defender. They've brought him in permanently now. I think they're going to have a really strong season. They've kind of got that spirit there. When things are going well, they get on a roll. I've got them finishing third.
Leo? Oh, we lost Leo. Is Leo frozen? Okay, we'll move on, and if Leo comes back, we can get him to go back over Southend. But he's dropped off. So my take on Southend. So I think they've retained most of that squad. They, as you said, kept Ben Goodliff. They brought in Harry Boyes from Sheffield United, Sam Austin from Notts County's quite an eye-opening signing, and Slavy Spazov from Slough. Their squad is decent. It's, as you said, it's solid. I'll get to the point. They finished 7th last year. I've got them finishing 6th this year. The only thing I would say is they snuck into the playoffs on the last day. They finished 36, I think it was, or 34 points behind Barnet. They only actually finished 16 points above Dagenham, who went down. They got in and they had all that momentum in the playoffs. I like them. They're solid. But I think it's raised expectations amongst their fan base, as kind of has been alluded to when I spoke to, I forget his name now, sorry, the lad that runs SUFC Blues News. And that's kind of been echoed that, those good players, the likes of Leon Perelon and Keenan Apaya, also really good players. There is a hope that they'll be challenging, up the top this year. Not convinced that they're going to be challenging it. They've got the firepower to match York, Carlisle, and Rochdale. And here's my hot take. If it doesn't start well, with that expectation, Kevin Marr could be the first man gone. It's been there a while. Mike, the owner, I forget his name now, the Aussie guy.
Yeah. I think he's got a bit of credit. I think he's got enough credit in the bank, to be fair. Even if he does get off to it. They didn't have a great start last season either, did they? They were sort of in and around that sort of 13th, 14th. At one stage, I thought they might get dragged into the bottom 4, but they just hit that run at the back end of last season. And I feel like when a club of sort of Southend size and the support they get, when they get on a roll, it's difficult to stop them. And they kind of hit that last season.
Yeah, agreed. We seem to have lost Leo. I'm assuming he'll be back in a moment. But let's crack on, and we move on next to the youngest squad currently, Sutton, still under Steve Morrison. Real nothing season for them last year. Their first season back in the National League, finished 12th. And just looking at their kind of ins and outs, I mean, it's a real overhaul of players. Whole load of players going out. Not many that have gone up, with the exception of Will Davis, who was one of the league's top scorers last year. A real powerful forward, and he's moved on and signed for Fleetwood. What's interesting me though with Sutton, and kind of my commentary as I've looked at it, is I've put here, it feels like Steve Morrison is building something at Gander Green Lane, because they brought in a lot of young players, and a lot of players from either academies or lower leagues. So people like Jaden White was a real hot prospect in the National League North. David Ogbonna from Slough, Kane Critchlow from Chelmsford, and then you've got the likes of Ashley Nadesan, who was on loan there for most of last year, and Brandon Njoku's coming from Cambridge. So there's a real mix, but it's a young player generally that they're bringing in. Morrison's another one that I could see, if it doesn't start well, could be under pressure. And I'd be interested to know whether Sutton fans and the Sutton hierarchy are prepared to give him a bit of time, given the players that he's brought in, to allow them to grow. I've got them. I've kind of I think they'll have the same kind of season. I've got them 11th this year. I expect that they may improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, I've got them 9th. It's a similar sort of views to you, mate. When looking back to last season, when we played them at home early on in the season, that first half, they looked like a different league. They were miles better than us. And I was sort of looking around thinking, these guys are going to walk the league, but they never really kicked on from a reasonable start. And they just kind of languished in the sort of lower mid-table, didn't they, for most of last season. Will Davis will be a loss. He got a lot of their goals last season. I know he didn't really perform for us, but Lewis Simper's quite a big player for them in midfield as well. So yeah, I kind of with you, mate. Looking at their recruitment and what they're trying to build there, I think they will have a pretty similar season to last season. Maybe take a little bit of time to sort of gel, but maybe finish strong. And I've got them finishing 9th.
Fair. I'm just messaging Leo on WhatsApp, and he said he's got an issue with his VPN, but he'll hopefully be back on in a minute. Okay, we'll keep going in Leo's absence. Actually, let's pause there, maybe, just before we come on to kind of the final few clubs. Tom, can I invite you to maybe share your pick for your National League 11? So just for everyone's benefit, I asked Tom and Leo to pick their 1 to 11, but they can only pick one player from each team. So just while we're waiting for Leo, Tom, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, I've got a few rogue ones in mind. So this is a really hard one to do. You sort of start somewhere and then you kind of have to go off on a tangent. I've started off with Nathan Ashmore in goal.
Wow.
Every time we play Boreham Wood, he's just a brick wall, and he's proper National League goalkeeper. I really rate Nathan Ashmore. There's a few other keepers I could have picked, but I've got other players from those teams in that position, so I've kind of gone with him there. I've gone for like a 5-3-2, so I've gone Gus Scott Morris at right back. Goals last season. It's not just goals though. He's a real player.
Yeah.
I've got Jack Cook at centre back. I had to. I've gone for Ryan Innes at Forest Green alongside him, and another rogue one, mostly based on my sort of PTSD from when we used to play Brackley. But I've gone for Gareth Dean at centre back as well. He's an absolute joke. So every time we played him, and I noticed he's barely left the side since then. I think he may have moved and come back once, but he played most of their games last season in a team that won the National League North. So he's obviously still got it at centre back. Left back, I've gone for Tyler Golden now at Altrincham. And then my midfield three, I've gone Jamie Osborne at Solihull, Ryan East at Rochdale, and Alex Newby at York. I did have Ollie Pearce up front, but I've decided to change my front two. So I've gone for Regan Linney at Carlisle and Alex Reid at Hartlepool.
Fair. Good shout. Welcome back, Leo.
Apologies, sorry about that.
VPN
on the work laptop started to play up, so
no
promises it won't happen again. But hopefully that is it now until the end of this.
No worries. I invited Tom just while we were waiting for you to share his National League 11. We'll come to yours shortly. We briefly covered Southend and Sutton.
Yeah.
Just while you're away, do you want to just give us your views on Southend and Sutton?
Yeah. So I've heard Tom's synopsis on Southend and when it cut out. Again, I really like Kevin Mayer. Really, really intense side in terms of when they're pressing. You know, very, very structured, very organised. A lot of very, very decent technical players as well at this level. So, what did they finish last year? Was it 4th? No, finished 6th or 7th on it last year. So I've got them slightly higher. I've got them finishing 4th. And then Sutton, they're I like what Steve Morrison's doing. I think that's a bit more of a long term plan. Again, really young sides. Yeah, really, really young sides, but a couple of experienced players. Lost Tyler French, we said earlier, to Solihull. But they'll get better because, again, they've kept the core of the squad. And that first half of the Vale last year probably was the best half I saw any side play against us all season. I mean, I was there thinking, Jesus, this side's going to be right up there. And then just didn't quite work out. So not quite in the playoffs, but I've got Sutton finishing 10th.
Good shout. Okay, let's get back to it with the final 6 clubs. Starting on the T's. And our nemesis from last season, Tamworth. Finished 10th, great season. I have to confess, and I will hold my hands up here, I wrote Tamworth off about 3 times last year. I think I said at the start of the season I couldn't see how they were going to stay up. I think I then wrote them off. Maybe they started well and I was like, no, it won't last. And then they got to the FA Cup 3rd round. And then I said, oh, it'll drop off after, they'll peak too soon. And obviously they did the double over us and then mounted a sort of late playoff charge and ended up finishing 10th. I'm sure I think you were both at the Lamb for the away game. And that was an absolute mauling that we got there. I mean, Luca Gunter made, I don't know how many good saves. And then obviously, it was like the Alamo. What are you boys expecting?
The Alamo was a good description to sum up that game. Yeah, it really was one of them. Ironically, we were the lambs to the slaughter. But I've got them down towards the relegation pack with everyone else. I don't think they'll go down because, again, what they are very good at, they've still got Tom Tonks is still there. Manny Duku's gone there. So, again, big striker to win any flicker-ons. Hayden Hollis is still there. But teams are going to be wiser. They'll have game plans now to properly counteract that. Clearly, someone's got to take some work out of something out of Barnett's book, because they would decide to smash them 7-0 at Prince Edward's, and again, that might have been that first time where you wrote off Tamworth last year. But losing Dan Craney, that's a big loss. And again, I just think teams are going to be a bit wiser to Andy Peaks, and that winger they had, forgotten his name. He went to Eastleigh, didn't he? He's left them as well. Shakura, yeah, they say really liked him. They had a couple of live wire wingers actually. But just a smart side. Obviously, they got us down to 10 men in both games last season. But yeah, again, I think teams are going to be wiser. So I've got Tamworth just surviving. I've got them finishing 20th.
Yeah, I've got them 19th, but I can only echo what you guys have touched on there. I wrote them off so many times last season. They're sitting in mid-table around Christmas. I was like, they'll be pulled in, but they just weren't. They just kept going. Obviously, they did the double over us last season. They're a horrible side, aren't they? They're effective, they're niggly. What I loved and hated at the same time was it was so simple. There was nothing fancy about what they did. They knew their strengths and they played to them. They had pace out wide. They got balls into the box and they had a striker that could score goals. When I watched them, I was like, football's not hard. They know their strengths. They played to them and they had a good season. Whether they can replicate that again this season, I'm not so sure. I think they've got enough to stay up. But as Leo said, I think a lot of teams are going to wise up to them a little bit this season, and they might have to sort of adapt a little bit to try and counter that. So I've got them finishing 19th.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they'll finish lower than they did. I've got them finishing 16th. I think they'll have enough. I do worry where the goals are going to come from. Dan Craney's a massive loss, and he's been replaced by our hero, Manny Duku. Jordan Ponticelli, I think, was released but is still there. They've signed a couple of players from AFC File. They brought in Joe Rye on loan from Barnet. That's a good signing. They've picked up a guy called Stephen Moles, who scored a lot of goals in National League North with Curzon Ashton. He could be a good signing. Alfie Bates from Brackley. So they have brought in players quite well. But I do agree. I think it will be a tougher season for them. You would assume, after all the money that they must have made through, the FA Cup run and the Tottenham game on telly and charging £400 a ticket, whatever it was, they must have some backing behind them. But, from maybe the players that they've signed, it's either hard to go to Tamworth or maybe they haven't got quite as much as we think. But you would assume they've got a bit behind them to strengthen if they needed to. But yeah, going there again on a Tuesday night.
They were part-time last year. I don't know if they still are, but
I haven't seen anything to say that they're not, or to say that they've gone full-time.
Yeah, same there.
Unfortunately, we haven't had any input from a Tamworth fan. Let's keep moving because we've been going for nearly an hour and a half. Let's go to our first day opponents. Truro City, winners of the National League South last year. A shock winner, I think. And they themselves came up from the Southern Premier South, I think, a couple of years before. Back in Cornwall now, not playing at wherever they were playing, Truro Road, beforehand. What are we expecting from Truro this year?
I don't know a huge amount about them. Again, to be honest, I know that Tyler Harvey, he's been around the block at this, National League South and National League level for a long time. He got buckets of goals from them last season. Obviously, one of the sort of main reasons why they came up. And they've got a very good manager. John Askey's very good manager. I was very surprised that he ended up down there, but
I was.
What he did last season was incredible. Complete outsiders before the season started, and then obviously to win the league. Fair play to them. I don't know enough about their squad to be able to comment on any the signings that they've made or players that have gone out. But given this, it's probably quite like a standard opinion. But given the size of the club, the lack of experience at this level, the distances of travel, I mean, they're going to have to rely heavily on their home form this season. Yeah. If they get that right, they've probably got a chance. But I've got them finishing 23rd.
Okay. I've got them staying up. Said about Tyler Harvey, kind of already low. He's been there for what feels like an age as well. So similar to Brackley, some players that have a bit of a nucleus that have been there for a consistent period of time. And John Askey, he's the real sell here. I mean, he's been here, he's done it, and if you got someone like Christian Oxlade-Chamberlain, who I don't think's anywhere near that good enough for a footballer, but Truro fans absolutely raved about him last year in the South. So clearly, he's able to identify and get the best out of players. What I did find fascinating was there was an article in the National League on the website, and it was with John Askey, and it resonated because it seems very similar to the predicament that Braintree, and then we'll get on to Wealdstone, what both clubs find themselves in that they've definitely got more contracted players. They are also full time, so that's good for them to bed themselves in. But he was saying that we're going to have to wait until the absolute last minute here to get in maybe 3 or 4 really, really good trialists that are going to massively improve the squads of the team. They've got the backing from those Canadian owners, so clearly the funding's there. And again, geography, yes, it might be a negative going away from home time, but again, that teams are not going to like going to Cornwall, and they will pick up a lot of points at home as a result.
Yeah, 10 to 3.
18, sorry, Hillsy. That was the position.
A little bit like Brackley. They've got a squad of players that have been together for a long, long time. Bags of experience. They lost their main striker. That's probably Tyler Harvey, but very, very pacey forward, Jace Cabia. So he's gone to Grimsby in the EFL. So I think he's quite a big loss. But they brought in some good players. Jeff Cott and Oxlade-Chamberlain, who were on loan there last year, have signed permanently. Harry Kite, who has lots of experience but hasn't played much. And then Lirak Hassani from Torquay, and Max Kinsey, a ball-playing centre-back on loan from Bournemouth. So they brought in some players. And again, thanks to Ian Highland from All Things TCFC. He said main strengths are the fact that the majority of squad played together, and that promotion run has really created something special amongst them. Lots of league experience, but the biggest challenge will be placing the goals and the assists and channel running of Jace Cabia and the distances we have to travel. So I think, very much along the lines of what you guys have said. I think it's a big ask for them. I've got them finishing 22nd. I just think they've come quite a long way quite quickly, and there's still a lot of kind of infrastructure off the field stuff as well that is probably going to take a little bit of adjusting to in the National League. Agree completely. Their home form will be what keeps them up if it does, but I think they might just fall short, and I've got them finishing 22nd. Let's keep it brief. Let's let's keep the same format because though this is a StonesCast podcast, hopefully some fans of other National League teams will join in. So obviously Stones stayed up on the last day of the season miraculously, seemingly, although with one of the highest points totals we would have gone down with 53. Sam Cox has replaced Neil Gibson as manager. The club has publicly come out and said that it's had to reduce the playing budget. We've lost a number of players. Some have gone to lower leagues, like Alex Dyer, Craig Eastman, Callum Cissay's gone to Salford, Josh Grant's gone to Carlisle, a whole host of other players have gone. Coming in, Junior Tiencia from Barrow, Sak Hassan from #United, Omar Musa, had lots of really good things and quite impressive against St Albans, and Dylan Kadji from Western Supermare. But like Braintree, the squad looks thin, paper thin, and kind of only one striker on the book. And I know he scored 4 goals in pre-season in midweek, but I really struggle to see where the goals will come from.
Yeah.
And consequently, I've got us finishing 21st.
Can't disagree, Hillsy. You said Braintree are doomed. I think Wealdstone are doomed as well.
I don't think we're doomed.
Well, I think we are.
But I think, yeah.
It's a real term cut in terms of playing budget from 2-3 years ago to where we are now. And again, that wasn't sustainable in terms of trying to survive. It's definitely not now. Sam Cox, I feel for him because he's been dealt with really rough hands here. And he should be given time, no matter what the circumstances are, to try and turn it around, assuming we do get off to a bit of a shaky start. But yeah, again, the players that have gone out, we've only got 14, 15 players on the books at the minute. And any trialists that come in, they've got to be good enough for a start, and that's the jury's very much out on that. But again, it's going to take time for them to bed in as well. So, unfortunately, I've got us finishing 22nd.
Yeah, I've got us finishing 22nd as well. I honestly believe that our season will be decided by mid-September. I think the loan players that we bring in over the next few weeks are huge. They have to hit the ground running. They have to have an impact in all positions, because the trialists that I've seen in pre-season haven't been up to it. And also the start to the season we have, obviously the Halifax game being reversed, that means we've got something like 3 home games in 4 or 3 home games in 5 at the start of the season. One, obviously the opening game's against Truro. That game's huge in my opinion. If whoever wins that is going to set themselves up for a good start, but whoever loses that is probably going to be looking at themselves going, Christ, we're in for a tough season now. I mean, the players we've brought in, I like TNCF from what I've seen of him. He looks a good signing. Sak Hassan, flattered to deceive. Dylan Kadji, I like him as well, but you're right, the depth isn't there at the minute. So the signings, we knew we weren't going to be bringing in a host of players before August, but the recruitment in the next few weeks is going to be massive for us, I think. But I've got us finishing 22nd.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about a shaky start there. I actually think the fixture list has been quite pleasant in terms of the opening sort of 4 or 5 games. I know obviously we've got Carlisle and then Southend and Rochdale after, but definitely. We can't afford a shaky start. I don't think we need to get a few points on the board out of those. We need to win one of those first home games, I think.
If we're in the bottom 4 come mid-20 September, I can't see us getting out of that.
Yeah, I mean, we were last year, right? Because Matt Taylor obviously picked up 1 win in his first 10, 11 games, but we got out of it.
We played all right in those games, and I always thought we were going to improve. I'm not so sure this season. I
mean, pre-season's been okay. I mean, the St Albans game, which is the only one I've actually seen, was god awful. Sticky pitch. We didn't ever look like, I think we'd have still been there and not scored. But we obviously stuck 6 past QPR under 4s. But I mean, we beat a strong Milton Keynes side 2-0. So, there are some signs, but as always, who knows what you can read into pre-season. But the StonesCast panel has unanimously said that Stones are going down. Wonderful. Okay, 3 left. Woking. Leo, I'm going to ask you to lead this off because I think I know where you're going with Woking.
So yeah, okay, interesting. I've got them finishing in the playoffs. I really rate Neil Ardley. And I think just the stats, somebody points out they only lost 3 times after Christmas last year. So picked up a whole bunch of form, lost to us, and then I think the other sides they lost to might have been like a Southend and a York. It was basically 2 sides that were right up there. Losing Dan Moss, that's a big blow. Not sure they brought in to replace him at right back. But again, the money's there. There's a fairly seasoned side. Tim Akinola, big coming in for them for Gateshead. Really like him. I really like Sam Ashby when he was with us, and I think he'll do well for them as well. But they did just one of those solid sides. You're not going to get them near Ardley. So I fancy Woking's chances, and I've got them finishing 6.
Yeah, I'm not as sold. I like Neil Ardley as a manager. I think he's a good manager. I'd take him at Wealdstone any day of the week. But looking at the sort of incomings that they've signed, there's nothing really screaming at me there. I look at Jake Hyde, for instance, and he's not really done it at this level. He's not a bit of a bizarre signing. Craig Ross from Maidenhead, okay keeper, nothing special.
He won't start because Jaskalainen starting.
Yeah. I mean, generally, there's nothing in there that's screaming at me and going, "Oh, that's a good signing." So I can't see how they're going to improve that much compared on last season. I've got them finishing 14th, just a very Woking-esque season.
I actually think they're going to have a good season. I've got them finishing 8th. Similarly, I've got a lot of time for Neil Ardley. I've put here that I think they've got rid of a lot of deadwood. Going in, so his legs are gone. Jermaine Anderson, Denon Lewis, Dion Kelly-Evans, Reece Gregor-Cox, Lewis Walker, Matt Robinson. They
went for a spell a year or 2 ago where they made a few really strange signings, didn't they? The likes of Denon Lewis and Charlie Wakefield, I think. And we were looking at
Darren Saul. Got given too much money.
Bizarre.
Yeah. But the players they brought in, like I say, we mentioned Akinola. That's a great signing. Jack Turner from Queen's Park. I don't know a huge amount about him, but stats-wise, he's been playing at a good level in Scotland. Caleb Richards is a decent fullback at Kiddie, and Aaron Drew's got bags of potential. Yeah. He's got a good pedigree, and he's had a good season at Oxford City. For me, I think their 1 to 8 in their team looks decent. It's the forward area that I'm like, beyond. Yeah, okay, he's effective.
He is getting on though, isn't he?
You're right. He's getting on. Ashford, but he needs another striker. Jake Hyde, as you've alluded to, I mean, he was there previously, wasn't he? He scored the winner against us, I think, in the playoffs, that playoff game. But, he's 35. I don't really see what he's going to really bring. For me, they need a young forward. They need a young forward who, obviously they lost Charlie Kendall to Southend, and I think Charlie Kendall's a really good player. If they had someone like Charlie Kendall, I think they'd sneak into the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised to see them, bring a forward in. And certainly thanks to Will Beeman, who gave us a bit of insight. He's alluded to as well, Matt Ward and Chinakoli, a couple of players that they've kept on as well. But it is that 25-goal striker that they're desperate for. Will says a top half finish would be par, but with such an open playoff picture, he hopes they'll sneak in there towards the end of the season. Okay, and the final 2 Ys. Let's start with Yeovil. Last season finished 18th. Been quite quiet there. A few players have gone. Sonny Bluelow Everton's gone to Torquay, and they brought in Tavon Campbell. He's gone there from Solihull. Carl Ferguson, he of Rochdale and Alty previously, and James Daly is a good signing from Harrogate. Other than that, it's been kind of quiet and very much as you were last season. And I think similarly, I've got them finishing 18th again. I think they're a side that could get dragged in, but they do have quality going forwards. With Tavon Campbell, Aaron Jarvis, Harvey Greenslade. I think they'll score goals, and that'll be enough to keep them out of the bottom 4, 3. But I think they're much of a muchness, really, Yeovil.
Yeah, I'm the same, to be honest. Similar sort of position I've got them finishing. I think Mark Cooper's one of those managers, again, that if, after a couple of bad results, he could be looking over his shoulder a little bit, because I don't think he's fully endeared himself to the fans there. There's been a few sort of rumblings there about his style of play. They got off to a reasonable start last season, didn't they? But then they just went through the second half of the season. They just didn't do anything, did they? Even we won there.
Yeah.
So, and if they haven't strengthened that much, initially I thought they might finish mid-table. But as we've been sort of going through this list and looking at the signings they've made, obviously James Daly and Tavon Campbell are 2 good players if they can stay fit. But I can see them having a similar sort of season to last season.
Yep, took the words out of my mouth, both of you. You say about Mark Cooper not interacting or necessarily being one that the fans are buying into, Tom. But if you actually have a look at the players that have left the club, they're absolutely scathing of him. Really? It's brilliant, yeah. So much social media beef, liking tweets saying he's absolutely useless or words to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but I just get the feeling, again, not really brought anyone in. Not really lost anyone, I guess, of massive importance. So, was it you said 18th last year on a Hillsy? 17th. That's what I've got them at.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what Ben at Glover's Cast has kind of alluded to. I think there's as you guys have alluded to, a little bit of frustration at Cooper Ball and how he likes to play. I think a little bit sort of along with the Stuart Maynard way. And similarly, I think they're looking and going, they'd like to be thinking they might out a playoff charge, but they could easily see themselves being back down the bottom where they are.
What he did do, just quickly, what he has done, he's actually instructed the ground staff to reduce the pitch size quite significantly, about 2 or 3 meters in each way. So it still fits within the diameter of the actual, what the regulations are in terms of pitch sizes. But he said the pitch was way too long. So yeah, he's brought down the size. I don't know what that means for Cooper Ball, but
they've got a lovely pitch down there. And from what I remember, that pitch is an absolute carpet. But
just in terms of the actual size of it, he's just brought down. Yeah.
Okay, we've gone through 1 through 22, 23, and we come to the final one. York City obviously went toe-to-toe with Barnet, nearly ran them close in the end after maybe falling away, and then blew up in the playoff semi against Oldham. Absolutely froze, fell apart. When you look at their signings, firstly, they've kept hold of Ollie Pearce. I think there's a lot of interest in Ollie Pearce. No one's really moved on, if any. No, I mean, loads of players have moved on, but Maz Kuyard's gone to Notts County. Everyone else, Deepa Akinyemi's gone to Derry City. But I think the view from the Same Old City podcast was that Akinyemi didn't really suit their style of play. So I'm not really surprised, although I think he cost £250,000 when they signed him a couple of years ago. But I mean, you just look at who they brought in. Hiram Boateng from Mansfield, Ollie Banks and Ash Palmer won the league with Chesterfield a couple of years ago. Both getting on a bit, but both very good players. Mark Kitching from Oldham, Alex Newby, Joe Gray from Hartlepool's a brilliant signing. Greg Ollie and Ben Brooks, who I don't know if you know, he runs his own kind of like channel, bit of a YouTuber, but very, very good footballer. He's coming from Maidstone, a left back. So they've seemingly strengthened what was already a very good side. For me, I can't see anyone stopping them.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. I just can't look past them. You look at that squad; it's an absolute joke. Like as you say, it was a ridiculous squad last season. Anyway, you got sort of Joe Felix and Josh Stones, Ollie Pearce. The only thing I'd say about him is they probably need to strengthen their goalkeeping. I'm not Harrison Mail's biggest fan. I know George Sykes-Kenworthy made a few cock-ups against us a couple of years ago as well. So they probably need to. They may look in that area there, but I mean that team is ridiculous. Every single player in that team you look at and go, they're so strong. And even if they do end up in a position where they're chasing later on in the season, you know that they're going to have the funds to go out and get this season Josh Stones or something like that. So if they don't win the league, I'll be gobsmacked.
Obviously, I nailed my colours to the mast earlier, so I've got them finishing second. But yeah, the midfielders they brought in, I completely forgot about Boateng as well. But because I saw Ollie Banks, Greg Ollie, and Alex Newby, which is like, well, that midfield three on its own is ridiculous. You know, that would pretty much walk into any midfield in the National League. That complements what they've already got. The only thing I would say with Tom and Harrison Mel, not convinced. And then they brought in Ash Palmer. So they'll go alongside Callum Howe and Malachi Fagan-Walcott.
Correct. Yeah.
Hopefully I've got the name right.
Yeah.
If the latter gets injured, Howe and Palmer are dead slow. So I'd worry about that. I do like the fullbacks, Fallowfield, Joe Felix. I've forgotten who the left back is they play, but that bit's all fine. And the rest of the squads, say midfield and up top, they're absolutely loaded. So they'll score a bucket for the goals. So they'll smash them sides. I just get the feeling if some teams are able to somehow restrict them, they may lose the occasional 1-0, 2-1, and that will be what will just see them pipping short of the title.
Fair. And we have.
I think I might be the only person who's not predicting York to win the league.
I mean, there's players there that we've not even mentioned in their squad. People like Ashley Nathaniel George, Tyree Sinclair, Alex Hunt, quality players. That through ball that Alex Hunt did at their place for I think it's their second goal, absolutely ripped us apart. Yeah. Okay. So let's just recap because we've got through all 23 teams. Let's just recap then. So Leo, just run through who's been in the league, who's in the playoffs, and who's going down.
Okay, so for me, winning the league with Rochdale. Playoffs are York, Hartlepool, Southend, Carlisle, Woking, and Altrincham. Going down are Morecambe, as we discussed, Braintree, Wealdstone, and Scunthorpe.
Tom?
I've got York winning the league. Playoffs, Carlisle, Southend, Forest Green, Rochdale, Hartlepool, and Halifax. Going down, Braintree, Wealdstone, Truro, and Morecambe.
I've got York winning playoffs, Carlisle, Rochdale, Forest Green, Hartlepool, Southend, and Solihull. And going down, Morecambe, Braintree, Truro, and Wealdstone.
I've got exactly the same as you, mate, apart from I've got Halifax in for Solihull.
Fair. We'll post these up and we'll share them. So, Leo, last thing then really is, who is your National League 11 picking only one player from each club?
this was a struggle, wasn't it? I mean, I was going to put like basically an entire Rochdale and York 11, and then then you threw that in there. So in goal, I've got Will Escalainen. I really like him. He seemed to cop a fair bit of slack from Woking fans a little while back. I think he's in their good books now, but really rate him. Sam Beckwith at left back from Rochdale. Luke Jenkins, we talked about earlier from Aldershot. Again, if he can keep himself fit, he'll be one of the best centre backs in the league. Like Tom, I've got Cookie, bit of Wealdstone bias, but has to be done. Gus Scott Morris also right back. His goal record at Southend says it all. In the midfield, so I've done a 4-4-2. I've got Ollie Crankshaw and Jermaine Francis as the wingers. And again, Crankshaw is very much injury dependent, but I think he could be, absolutely fantastic for Alty this season. In the midfield, I've got Greg Ollie from York and Charlie McCann from Forest Green Rovers. And then up top, I've got Regan Linney from Carlisle and Luke Norris from Boreham Wood.
Good shout. So my team, I'm not quite sure what formation I've got. I think it's a sort of a 2-2 wingers, wing forwards. But it's something along this line. So I've got Sam Johnson in goal from Halifax. My two centre-backs, Jack Cook. And Aaron Pierre from Eastleigh. Then I've got my DCM, my pivot, Joe Felix. Even though I think sometimes he plays right back, he played in that role for York against us. He was outstanding. Right wing back, Gus Scott Morris. Left wing back, Bessart Topolodge from Hartlepool, ex-Bromley. He's a really, really tidy player. My two sort of centre mids, Ryan East from Rochdale and Charlie McCann from Forest Green. My wing forwards, Carol Roberts from Scunthorpe and Josh Barrett, Aldershot. And then Regan Lilly up front.
That team would do a job.
Who's your manager?
Oh, did you do that as well?
I'll just put Graham Coughlin in there for Boston after what he did last season.
Yeah, I'll join you on that.
That's a good shout. Sam Cox.
You got Cookie already.
Yeah, we've got Cook in there.
Oh yeah, so it has to be someone I've not picked. I don't think I had an Altrincham player, so I'll go with Phil Parkinson. Right. We've whittled on for an hour and 45 minutes talking all things National League. Hopefully our listeners have found that insightful. Firstly, thank you to each and every person, the 20-odd fans from other teams who have taken their time to kind of respond to our questions and give us some real good insight and some knowledge of your teams. So huge thanks to you guys for that. We look forward to coming to your place and take over your town, as we like to think we do at some point in the season. Leo, Tom, first of all, anything else? Any hot takes? Anything we haven't covered?
Nothing from me, mate.
I'm looking forward to the inevitable backlash to my predictions.
We'll publish them and make sure that they're there for everyone to see. But yeah, thank you, boys. Really appreciate your insights. The main StonesCast is back next week. I think it's next Thursday. I can't remember off the top of my head. I meant to look at who was on, but it'll be the in-depth Wealdstone prediction, looking at hopefully a few more signings as well. Might be across the door. We've got our final friendly at home to Solihull Town on Saturday. Meet the manager with Sam Cox next Tuesday night. And there is a coach running to, I think it's Boston, but I'll probably cover that in more detail next week. So, as always, boys, thanking you. Up the Stones, and we'll see you soon.
Up the Stones.